Alright, everybody ready? Alright, so there's a few things that I want to clarify, because just walking around the room here, I'm seeing a number of people making the same mistake, and that mistake seems to be that they weren't here mentally or physically yesterday. So we'll, at this point, when you open up your new millimeter template, this is what you should see. So what I have here is I'm in my paper space. So my paper space down here says I named mine 8.5 by 11. You could say layout 1. You can write whatever you want there. But this is what my paper space looks like. And your model space should be blank. Since we're opening up a blank template, I don't want to have anything already drawn here. And I'm noticing that my viewport, which is why I see this grid here, and remember our viewport is our window into our model space, our viewport only takes up this portion of our template. So our name, our title, date, and scale is not part of the viewport. So this is our new millimeter template. This is what we're going to be using from now till the end of the year, so you want to make sure that this is correct. I also have this fairly nicely centered on my page. You know, if you just eyeball it as close as you can, but I just want a nice even border all the way around the page on that. Okay, so for today's assignment, as promised, we are going to be working with some different viewport scales. So right now, if I click on my viewport, I should have this set to 1 to 1. So right here at the bottom on my toolbar here, very few of you can see it, but your scale, when you click on it, you see how you get all these different scales here. We've got our proportional scales here at the top. This is what we'll be using for now, and then later when we get into architectural stuff, we'll be using these architectural scales, which are these, you know, 1 inch equals 1 foot kind of thing. But for now, we're just using these proportional scales here, and for yesterday's assignment, it was set to 1 to 1. And what that means is when I go to my model space and say I draw a rectangle, which will make what make it 120 by 75. So here is my So I've got a rectangle here. It's 120 wide by 75. Go to my model space, and that's exactly what I see, 120 by 75. And like I was saying in yesterday's lecture, this is one of CAD's true strengths, was that if I were to print this now and take out my millimeter ruler and put it up against the page, sure enough, this line would actually measure 120 millimeters. So CAD can very accurately, on any kind of printer, reproduce accurate dimensions. And that's critical for architectural stuff, because that way you really don't even have to dimension anything. I can just, if it's a scale to 1 to 1, I want to know what dimension is, I can just take my millimeter ruler and measure it and know the answers. Where we run into a problem is, say I have another rectangle, and say this rectangle is let's see, 350 by 150. And so I'm going to dimension this here. So we can see we have 350 here. We've got 150 there. Now when I go into my paper space, I have my first rectangle, but my rectangle is too big. It doesn't fit. So how am I going to print this if it doesn't fit? Well, that's where our scaling is going to come into play. So I'm going to click on my rectangle, my viewport here. And instead of 1 to 1, I'll go 1 to 2. So now what this means is every millimeter that I measure is actually going to be 2 millimeters in size of my actual drawing. So if I went to build this, I would know that I need to use 2 millimeters for every 1 millimeter that I measure. And then usually I'll click into my viewport here. You know, now that I'm inside my viewport, I can move it around. So I want to have this nicely centered. We want to make our documents as aesthetically pleasing as possible. So position it so it's nice and centered. Then what I like to do is, you'll notice just by me moving it around, I've accidentally modified my scale. So 1 to 2 would be 0.5. You can see now it's 0.50 with a bunch of numbers behind it. This is extremely common in panning, that you accidentally move the mouse wheel, which is going to cause you to zoom in and out. So I want to go in, I want to reinforce my 1 to 2. It's going to move everything slightly. And then, just to make sure I don't make that mistake again, I'm going to lock it. Now I'm locked at my dimensions. This viewport here is now locked at a scale of 1 to 2. I want to update my scale in my template here. So up to this point, it's just said 1 to 1. So I'm just going to double click on here. And we're going to change that 1 to 2. So this should read the exact same way our viewport scale reads. So it's grayed out right now because it's locked, but it says 1:2. So I want to have 1:2, meaning a 1 to 2 scale down there. And then the only other thing we need to do is, looking at our piece of paper, if I print this, there's no way we would be able to read our dimensions here. So we need to enlarge our dimensions, and if we all recall from before, the quickest and easiest way to do that is I'm going to go to my dim style, I'm going to modify, and then we'll go to this fit tab, and our overall scale, since we did a 1 to 2, we can also double the size of all of our dimensions here. And now I can easily read everything. So for today's assignment, that's what I'm looking for, that you have 1 to 2 written in your scale, that your viewport is actually at a, for today's assignment, be 1 to 2. Which one is it's the sprocket. Yep. And then I'm looking to make sure that your dimensions are legible, so you've enlarged these dimensions. And I'm looking to make sure that your viewport is in fact inside your template here and doesn't overlap beyond this just inside rectangle here. And I'm looking for that your template is nicely centered on your page, so when you print it, it will look pleasing. So any questions on viewport scaling? Again, great habit to just set the scale and lock it, because it really is easy to change the scale without even knowing it. Good luck.